History of a Teacher by Famous Fault. Chapter 5. Taking the Jump. Wednesday morning, Yugi made his way towards the grassland behind the castle. Madame Hooge was already there with the first-year Gryffindors and Slytherins. The students stood in two lines, holding out their hands and yelling, "Up!" at their brooms several times. Here and there, some brooms lifted a decimeter before falling to the ground when its student lost his or her concentration. No one had noticed him yet. Madame Hooge kept instructing the students. She seemed to have trouble keeping her calm. She noticed him after helping a Gryffindor who had attracted the broom of the person in front of him.
"So you came to watch. It's chaotic. Don't believe I've ever seen such a hopeless class before,"
she said.
"Don't think there will be many promising Quidditch players among them."
"I think it's fascinating," Yugi stated. "I can't wait for the first match."
"I both am and aren't,"
Madame Hooge said with a frown.
"Why?"
Yugi wondered.
"See, I love the game. It's just that no matter how often I crave a nice and clean game, the Slytherins and Gryffindors knock each other from their brooms, they kick, they hit. It's terrible. Oh well, it's part of the sport. It's a rough game."
"I like games," Yugi said, and smiled bitterly. Madame Hooge did notice the sudden flare of darkness around him that faltered just as soon as it appeared. She didn't like it. The professor himself was, in her eyes, a likable person, but there was something more to him.
"What kind of games?"
Madame Hooge asked, and pushed away her feelings of unease. "Card games, mostly," Yugi said with a frown. The sound of card games didn't live up to the intensity of the games he played. Actually, it sounded rather pathetic.
Madame Hooge snorted. "Card games are nothing. They require no skill, no strength, no stamina, no team play. Nothing."
Yugi laughed out loud when he heard that. "Those games require a lot more of all the above than you think."
"Sure," Madame Hooge said, clearly not believing him. "I have to go attend my class before they all break their brooms. Why don't you come to try next week? You just might turn out to be a wizard."
"Sorry, I think I will decline," Yugi said. "I'm rather sure I'm no wizard, and I don't feel the need to be. I surely won't try to be." Yugi kicked a rock away and dug his hands in his pockets. His words had caught Madame Hooge's attention. She saw her class was still busy trying to get their brooms to their hands, slowly making progress. She turned to face him again.
"Why wouldn't you want to be a wizard?"
she wondered.
"What's wrong with it?"
"I've had bad experiences with wizards. It's my own fault I ended up here. I dug too deep in things that should have been laid to rest. Dumbledore took me in to keep me from getting in trouble. I had actually two choices. Come here and teach or die. To me, that's still an easy choice."
"Dying?" Professor Hooge wondered, troubled. "Why? What did you do?"
"You took the sprint, now you only need to take the jump," Adem said, and appeared in spirit form next to Yugi. He knew precisely what Yugi was trying to do, and he'd support him all the way. "I'll be there to catch you." "What about you? When are you going to jump?" Yugi accused him. "I did it in the beginning several years ago. I did it because you couldn't. Now I'm glad I did. Things are easier to understand if you do."
"Yugi! Yugi!" Professor Hooge yelled at him and snapped her fingers before his eyes. "Wake up!"
It was probably because he was the youngest, but all the teachers called him by his first name, all except for Professor Snape. It wasn't uncommon among the teachers to call each other by the first name, but Yugi was still unaccustomed to it. After all, he was used to the regular sensei. Yugi blinked a couple of times and then fixed his gaze on Madame Hooge. "What I did? I tried to hunt down a Death Eater." Madame Hooge dropped her jaw.
"What? Why? Are you insane?"
At the moment, I didn't know who or what he was. I found that out later. Madame Hooge was still staring at him wide-eyed. She seemed unable to say anything. "Just do it, partner," Adem said encouragingly. "I did it because he killed my friends and family. My friends and family are dead. I just haven't admitted that to myself yet. If I did, things would probably become better, but I haven't dared yet. I've been too busy hunting. Now I can't anymore. Now I have to look where I'm going instead of just rushing ahead."
"I'm sorry," Madame Hooge said, horrified.
"So am I. Now I'll leave you in your class. Your students seem to have achieved what they wanted to achieve." It was true. All students were standing with their brooms in their hands. Curious whispers went through the class when they saw the look on Madame Hooge's face. Yugi turned and left. With hasty steps, he made his way towards the castle. Yugi was glad that everyone was attending classes so he could make his way without being seen, just to be stunned when he reached the doors toward the Great Hall. Peeves was busy writing down all the rumors that smeared Yugi on the two doors with illuminating letters. But not only the rumors, the students had made up other things too. Peeves was oblivious of the fact that Yugi was standing behind him. Yugi clenched his jaw, and a great anger started to build up in him, the kind of anger that Yugi couldn't have felt before it was placed within him by the deaths of his friends. "Peeves?" he whispered. The ghost turned around and started laughing when he saw Yugi. Then, to Yugi's great surprise, he started singing, "A little death to kill Muto's friend. She was number one and her name was Anzu. Lucius Malfoy burst in and waved his wand. There went number two and his name was Kaiba. A green flash through the air. Number three fell to the ground and his name was Merrick." "Let me handle this before the entire school hears it," Atem demanded, stressful from Yugi. "A shadow game?" Yugi whispered with a frown. "Yes," Atem said, and didn't even expect Yugi to protest anymore. "Okay, but don't do him any lasting damage." Atem was astonished. It had been ages since Yugi had asked for something like that. Nowadays, he usually was the one to encourage a shadow game when needed. It made the former pharaoh glad that Yugi was getting his softness back, slowly but surely. Atem took control, and Peeves noticed it. He stopped singing and stared.
"How are you?"
he asked eventually. Atem studied the door further. Some of the messages were absolutely not supposed to come out. "Let's play a shadow game. It is said that an evil being was locked away in the items. The darkness that's in your heart is in my heart too. I allowed my anger to take over, and you paid the price. You used the power of the shadows to destroy Egypt. Are you good or are you evil? Tell me where Yugi is. I'm letting the seal take me instead. Now that you're gone, the darkness is starting to grow. You've already shown me who you really are. Last time you didn't care who suffered." There was a lot more written on the door, but these were the sentences and questions that had always haunted Atem most, and thus the ones that caught his eye. He narrowed his eyes and said, "I'm sure you know. It seems like you've gotten your hands on our notebooks." Peeves laughed and started singing again.
"Once there was a pharaoh, wicked as could be. He destroyed upper and lower Egypt. He used dark powers as shadows, and he didn't care who suffered. Oh, we'll take cover, 'cause now he is among us. He possesses the short little teacher and killed all Micta's friends."
"You went too far," Atem said with an anger to frighten anyone. Peeves was dumbfounded. He was used to people yelling at him, but somehow this was different, darker. "You dug too deep in secrets that should have stayed hidden. Remove these words at once and speak to no one about this," Atem demanded with a furious crimson gaze. Hadn't he already died? Peeves would have thought he would die right then and there because of the intense gaze. He shook these feelings away and asked scornful,
"What if I refuse? What if I tell everyone in the castle?"
Atem frowned. "Let's make a deal. We play a game. If you lose, you remove the text and will keep this to yourself for all eternity. If you win, you can tell whoever you like."
"I never lose,"
Peeves pointed out, hoping to scare the ancient spirit out of the deal. He had read enough to know he didn't stand a chance. Atem's eyes narrowed, and the ghost realized it was of no use.
"What if I neglect the deal?"
Atem smirked harshly. "Then I will have no choice but to let the shadows devour your very being." "Atem!" Yugi said, horrified. "You wouldn't!" "I'm bluffing, Yugi. I can bluff. He can't."
"All right, I accept."
Peeves yelped, terrified.
"What game?"
"You like making fun of the students and teachers. You behave mischievous all the time. Can you even see the world the way it really is? Here are the rules. I tell you about a person, then you have to guess why that person or persons act the way he or she does. If you miss 5, you lose."
"That's only how I can lose, not you. That isn't fair."
Peeves wailed. "Keep it down." Atem growled at the poltergeist. "I wasn't done yet. You have to tell me about something you've done, then I have to guess why you did it. If I have 5 wrongs, I will lose."
"Fine, I'll start. When the Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher of 1994 showed up, I kept calling him Loony Lupin. So how would you know why I did that?"
Peeves still did brave attempts to be scornful, but wasn't very successful. "I know a lot more than you think. For instance, I know that Remus Lupin was a werewolf. Was that why you kept calling him that?"
"Yes, you're right."
Peeves said grumpy.
"Your turn."
Atem gave the poltergeist a wry smile. "Guess I dug my own grave. I don't want to do this," he told Yugi. "Isn't there a way to get out?" Yugi wondered. He had already been uncertain about the shadow game, but had believed in Atem's judgment. "Of course there is. Admitting defeat, though that's no option right now. There's too much at stake." The ancient ruler sighed.
Once there was a girl with white hair, pale skin, and blue eyes in a land where the sun turned everyone brown and black hair protected the people from merciless rays. In that very same country, there was a white dragon with blue eyes. The villagers stoned the girl. Why?
Ha! That's easy!
Peeves snorted.
They were making fun of her because you looked so much like the dragon!
Atem shook his head.
No, Peeves. They weren't making fun of her, they were afraid of her. They accused her for the existence of the white dragon, despite the fact that the dragon had saved several villagers from slave traders.
Idiots!
Peeves remarked.
So I went down. 4 to me, 5 to you. My turn!
You know what, Peeves? Let's finish this off quickly. I've got better things to do.
Atem growled dangerously.
The reason for anything you do is because you love to create chaos and disorder. Am I correct?
Of course it is!
Peeves said and rubbed his forehead with one finger.
We both know you'll win if we keep this game of yours up, so the only way for me to win is to cheat!
I thought you had read our notes.
Atem asked, bewildered.
You should know what happens to cheaters.
How are you going to punish a ghost?
Peeves wondered curiously and launched in midair.
Besides, I wouldn't call it cheating, call it forfeiting!
That's fine by me.
Atem said, secretly relieved. He had no idea how he could have made up such a bad game. He was out of form and distracted by the devastation he felt in Yugi's heart.
That does mean, though, that you have to acknowledge me as winner and thus follow the deal. Don't tell anyone.
Pfft! You thought I was going to keep that promise?
Peeves wondered and started singing again.
Once there was a pharaoh, what can ask of me?
Fine then,
Atem called out, angered.
you broke the rules. In a shadow game, those that break the rules await terrible punishment. You should know that.
What's that?
Peeves asked, terrified as the eye of Horus appeared on Atem's forehead.
I'll show you. Penalty game. Illusion of reality.
No!
Peeves screamed, and Atem realized he had to get out quickly before Peeves attracted the attention of Filch or a teacher.
No, don't make me say this! This isn't true!
Atem looked around him nervously. It wasn't easy to get away unseen if anyone appeared. The staircases from the door to the great hall were all rather visible from nearly everywhere. Good thing there were no paintings that could have seen anything.
If you remove the text on the door and promise not to provoke me or Rebecca ever again, I'll take it away. Hurry!
The text disappeared, and Atem removed the illusion conjured by the shadows instantly.
Now this is our little secret,
he whispered. Then he turned around and walked away. As soon as he reached his chamber, Atem checked on Yugi, who had withdrawn to his soul room. He saw no other option to withdraw himself and talk to Yugi inside their mind and soul. When he found himself in his chamber, that no longer was a maze, he opened the door and walked into the little hallway between their two souls. Yugi's door was closed, not so unusual of lately.
Come out, partner,
Atem said, and knocked on the door. Yugi opened it a bit, and the former pharaoh saw tears in Yugi's eyes. True tears, finally. Atem cocked his head slightly and placed a hand on the door.
Yugi?
The short Japanese pushed the door open entirely and sank to his knees, sobbing uncontrollable. Atem also sank to his knees and just held Yugi, whose tears were far from run out. He rocked the younger slightly and whispered,
It's okay. It's okay.
Had it been anyone else but Atem, would have been forlorn. But with Yugi, it was all right. I can't believe they're dead, Yugi sobbed. Atem didn't reply to that. What could he have said? They've been dead for a long time? Not an option. I feel so empty, alone. I don't want to feel alone.
I know, Yugi. I understand. Things will become better now, even though it might not seem like that.
Atem whispered softly. He liked this side of himself, though it only ever came out, with some exceptions, when Yugi needed it, which wasn't very often. They can't get any worse, can they? Yugi sobbed bitterly.
Don't tempt fate, Yugi. We still have Rebecca, Rio, and Mokuba. There are still persons in your heart, and in mine. We are not alone yet. Besides, we'll never be alone as long as we've got each other. I'm still here for you.
But you shouldn't be, Yugi called out angrily and looked up to meet Atem's gaze. You should have passed on instead of being trapped here. Now you'll be here forever, or in there. Yugi gave the door behind the pharaoh a nod.
Right now, I'm glad I'm still here for you. We'll see what happens later, when that time comes.
Atem sighed, well aware Yugi was right, though he wasn't going to admit to anyone that he was afraid of the future, afraid of forever needing to guard the shadows and needing to see everyone he cared about passing away without being able to follow them. Was this how it felt for you in the beginning, when you were away for so long? Yugi wondered. Atem shook his head.
You and I might be alike in many ways, but you and I feel different. I was angry, not directly crushed. It took a while before I reached that stage. Then it became empty inside. There were great slashes over the walls inside my soul room that showed my agony, but it was empty from feeling. While keeping you from doing something you'd regret, I started to handle and accept. I have done that now. There is no anger or devastation left. Just a great, never-ending sorrow. You can live with it, but not ignore it. You'll never get over them. You just have to keep the memory alive.
I'll try. Yugi sobbed and gave Atem an attempt at a smile.
So what did you do to Peeves?
Atem was well aware that Yugi was simply trying to distract both of them, but the former pharaoh was okay with that. Yugi still needed some more time and a good sleep, but Atem just didn't want to let him go yet.
I showed Peeves how life really is, instead of the fun and jokes life is to him. He sees life very simply. The more people are annoyed, the more chaos, the better. I'm nearly jealous of him. But he can't really feel. Not sadness, not anger, no true joy. Just an immense and uncontrollable malice. I pity him.
He won't do it again, will he? Yugi wondered.
No, he won't.
Atem got to his feet.
Come on, Yugi. Take a nap before your first class begins.
Wednesday was a pain to Harry. He got loaded with even more homework while he hadn't even finished the homework from the previous day. He had also Professor Muto's assignment and another detention with Umbridge to look forward to. He was so busy that he didn't notice anything strange, like a load of third-year Gryffindors and Hufflepuffs that didn't hurry away from the Great Hall after lunch when classes started again like everyone else. Neither did he give the fourth-year Slytherins and Hufflepuffs a thought when he saw them playing outside while they should be in class. He only knew he envied them. At dinner, Angelina Johnson, the Gryffindor House Quidditch team captain, tracked him down. She gave him an L when she found out he couldn't make it to tryouts that Friday. When he told her he was in detention and couldn't help it, she didn't listen and just stormed off. "At least it's only lines," Hermione said consolingly, as Harry sat back down on the bench. "It's not as if it's a dreadful punishment, really." Harry nodded. For a moment he had considered telling them what happened when he had detention with Umbridge, but it seemed like something between Umbridge and him. A fight of wills, and Harry wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of complaining. "I can't believe how much homework we've got," Ron said miserably. "Well, why didn't you do any last night?" Hermione asked him. "Where were you, anyway?" I fancied a walk," Ron said shifty. With that answer, Harry was convinced he wasn't the only one concealing things at the moment. The three of them hadn't noticed Dean coming up to them, but suddenly he sat down next to Ron. "Hey, has any of you seen Professor Muto today?" Dean wondered. The three friends looked at the staff table simultaneously, but Professor Muto was nowhere to be seen. "No," Harry said, and the third and fourth years came to his mind. "I believe all his classes were cancelled today. I wouldn't know why, though." "How so?" "You see, I'm still trying to figure out why I recognize that guy. I mean, I even know his voice from somewhere." "That would be enough to recognize him by," Ron pointed out. Harry and Dean chuckled. "That's what I said the first time," Harry remarked. "What about Rebecca?" "Who's that?" Dean asked, confused. "Rebecca Hawkins, fourth year Ravenclaw. She arrived yesterday," Hermione explained. "She knows Professor Muto. I believe that their grandfathers know each other very well, and that they have become friends due to that many years ago. Though it's still a bit weird." "Hermione," Ron complained. "Why do you need to be so suspicious of him?" "You weren't there, Ronald," Hermione snapped at him. "Something was off about the way he told me." "What are you talking about?" Dean wondered, and was looking from one to the other. Hermione looked at Harry, but he just shrugged. She didn't need his approval. "You know the hieroglyphics on the wall?" Hermione stated. Dean nodded. "Well, last Monday I stayed to ask him about them. He told me a legend, but it sounded as if he knew more than he wanted to pretend about, and as if he had personal ties to it. This is how it goes." Both Ron and Harry had heard it before, yet they both listened carefully. "Wow," Dean said breathlessly when Hermione was done. "You know, it still doesn't make much sense," Ron said. "It's way too confusing." "Isn't the important part the Pharaoh?" Dean wanted. "I mean, his part made sense. There was an evil being that tried to destroy his country. He sacrificed his own life and soul to seal away himself and the evil being with a specific item, a puzzle, using his name as the key to do so. Then he wiped his own memory and his name from history. Brave guy." "I think he's sad," Harry remarked slowly. But it wasn't that what was on his mind. He was thinking about the dark powers Hermione had told them about. If they were real, what would happen if they fell into the wrong hands? Shadow games. Harry had a hard time imagining Voldemort playing games, though if they were powerful enough to do so much damage. The only thing he found difficult to understand was what spell they could have used to make such power within those items. Magic didn't work that way. You couldn't create power with spells. They were missing a vital part of the story. But what's the important part of the story? I mean, to me, it sounds like a legend, a myth, Dean said. Why do you think it's true? I've never heard about it before. I sent Ron's brother Bill a letter. He works for Gringotts as a curse breaker. He has been in Egypt, so perhaps he knows something, Hermione said. I expect it back any day now. Well, let me know anything interesting, Dean said, stood up and left the Great Hall with Seamus. Thursday morning, Yugi awoke rather slowly. Usually, he was up at once, but now he had his eyes half open and was lying with his head under his pillow, looking up. He felt weird, as if he had slept a very long time. What day was it? Right, Wednesday.
Sorry to disappoint you, but it's Thursday morning,
Atem pointed out softly and appeared in spirit form next to Yugi, sitting on the bed.
Your next class starts in exactly 1 hour. They cancelled all your classes for you yesterday. You have to thank Madam Hooch for that.
I will thank her. At breakfast. Guess I better get dressed. He got out of bed, got dressed, and entered the Great Hall through the teacher entrance. No one seemed to have seen the messages Peeves had written, something both Yugi and Atem were grateful for. He sat down next to Professor Snape and Madame Hooch. Thanks, Yugi whispered to her as he sat down. You seem to need it, she whispered back, feeling awkward. I did, Yugi replied, seemingly casually. So, any terrible classes today? She asked in an attempt to make conversation. 5th year Gryffindors and Slytherins. Been told they're the worst combination to have, though I didn't see why last time. I just hope they've done what I asked them to, Yugi said, and a minuscule smile appeared as he thought about the first class he had ever taught. The 3rd and 2nd years gave no trouble. At this rate, everyone in the castle knew he was a muggle, and there was no need to tell anyone. Lunch went by quickly, and soon Yugi found himself facing the 5th years again. Did you all prepare for today? He wondered, and was pleased when everyone nodded. He made a mental note not to give them too much homework. They probably had more than they could manage already.
You are a kind person. My teachers weren't like that,
Atem said in an attempt to cheer Yugi up a bit. His later's dark mood was showing all too clearly. You never told me about your teachers, Yugi remarked.
You never asked,
Atem replied, with no joke intended. Funny, Yugi said dryly. All right, Miss Bulstrode, present to us 1840. Tell me what you know. Yugi listened carefully to their presentations and was absorbing all information he could. He was surprised about how much work the student had actually put into their assignments. He was even more pleased by how well the cooperation between Tracy Davis and Dean Thomas had worked. They did an incredible job, and only Hermione Granger could live up to it. They've been very blunt, Yugi pointed out. They worked everything out into detail, though I was troubled by Theodore Knott's description of the war.
You weren't the only one. Many Gryffindors were displeased too,
Atem pointed out. He made the Death Eaters sound like heroes. Perhaps not too smart in a class taught by a muggle, Yugi said dryly. He was honest, though. He made clear what happened. It was good enough for my purpose. Very good, everyone. We will be starting on Monday with... Yugi interrupted himself abruptly when his eyes fell on the red clock above the door. We'll be taking that on Monday. You're free to leave. As soon as the students had left the classroom, Yugi turned to face the wall with the tablets. He sighed deeply.
Yugi, we're not alone yet,
Atem said. Yugi turned around and found Tracy Davis hesitating by the door. Anything wrong, Miss Davis? Yugi asked her. Tracy Davis shook her head. No, Professor, it's just... She did her best to search for words. Did you mind that I put you together with a Gryffindor? Yugi suggested. No, it's not that, Tracy said quickly, a bit too quickly. She went red. It went really well working with Dean. We actually had a lot of fun. But it's not that it's... I think you should hear this from a Slytherin, because we are so stereotyped, you know. I mean, people are taken in by Slytherin because of cunning, resourcefulness, and ambition. There's nothing wrong with that. The reason that nearly all Death Eaters come from there is because it has almost all the pure-blooded wizards and witches. It's simply logical. She took a brief pause to catch her breath. Sorry, I'm rambling. I just wanted to tell you that we don't all share Theodore's or Draco's values. Some of us Slytherins, too, think you are a very good teacher, despite what the others say, and I believe that even some of us would stand up against him if he's on the rise once again. You believe he is? Yugi wondered, surprised. I've been told everyone takes Professor Dumbledore and young Mr. Potter as liars.
I don't know. I believe many people just don't want he who must not be named to be back and refuse to consider it, but yeah, I believe he is. Too much has happened, particularly last year, for him not to be. I don't think they're liars. I think they're brave, but they keep fighting for their cause, despite the reputation they've got.
Yugi nodded. It's brave of you telling me this, Miss Davis. But you shouldn't be telling me. Tell Mr. Potter. Tell Professor Dumbledore. Show them not everyone thinks they're crazy, that they are not fighting for a lost cause.
Professor Ruto, can I ask you something?
Tracy asked. Depends, Yugi said with a frown. Tracy Davis opened her mouth to ask something, then changed her mind.
What will you do if the school is attacked?
She wondered. Yugi smiled. Fight, of course.